Okay, so as I mentioned in the last video, what we'll be doing is actually modeling an ice cream store. Let me check my mic here. I'm not getting, I have a little meter here, so hopefully it's recording okay. If not, I'll re-record it. What we want to do is we want to model an ice cream store, and really the first thing we need to do, and there's actually a homework sheet that shows the classes we want, but one of the first things is, well, we need to start actually adding some classes. And these classes will represent various parts of the store that we have. The most basic classes that we have are actually representing the ice cream and the flavor of the ice cream. So what I'll do in this video is I will show adding these and then leave the rest of them as part of the exercise. So what we do in Papyrus is we use this palette and we just drag things over onto the canvas that we want to add. So if we want to add a class, we just drag it over. And what we'll do is we'll call this class flavor. And then we'll have another class. And this class will actually be the ice cream. Okay. So now that we have these two, what we want to do is we want to add a little bit of information to them. And we'll say, well, the first thing is that a flavor really has to have a name of some sort. It's something like chocolate, vanilla, mint, whatever we want it to be. And so the way that we add these properties is instead of just, say, starting to type in here, the properties are actually also on this palette. And so what we can do is we can grab a property and we can drag it over. And when we do that, what we get is we get something with a bunch of defaults that are filled in. So it's called attribute 1, and it has some various settings here about whether it's derived or leaf or read-only. Most of these we don't have to worry about. If you're curious, you can hover over them. And for most of the cases, it actually tells you what this is. So for instance, for isLeap, it says whether it's possible to further specialize a redefinable element. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about these things for now. This tool actually gives us maybe more than we need for what we're doing. But we need some basic things, like we need the name. And so we said, well, what we'll do is we'll just say, we'll call this attribute name, and this is the name of the flavor. And then we need a type of some sort. And so if we click here, we get to this model view, and we can expand things out. And you see we have the flavor and ice cream classes that we added. But if we keep drilling down, we also see these various data types. And these data types are the ones that we brought in by saying we want the primitive types as well. So in this case, we have name, and this is a string. And then the multiplicity, right, we just say, well, this has one name. And so we'll just set it to 1. And then these other ones, we can just go ahead and leave alone. We can go ahead and leave unique checked because in cases where maybe we use this in some type of association, then we would expect the different flavors to have different names. Okay, so we have that, and then we want to do something similar where we add a name for ice cream as well, since when we create an ice cream of some sort, we would also say here, well, we give the ice cream some name, so when people are ordering it in our store, they know what to order. So we'll select that. Okay, and let's go ahead and save. And now we have a very, very simple model where we have ice cream, we have flavors, and we don't have any relationship between the two. Well, of course, what we'd like to do is we'd like to define some kind of ice cream as being made up of different flavors. So you could imagine you could have vanilla and it would have one flavor, but maybe you have something like, some mix of vanilla or chocolate cherry or something like that. And so now suddenly you have multiple flavors. So what we really want is this ability to model this and to say, well, if I have an ice cream, it has at least one flavor in it, but it could have more. And so what we can do is we can create an association. And you see here's the different edges that we have that are possible. And this is all of them that we get. If we scroll down the rest of the way, we have an association. And so what we can do is we can click this, and then you see we get this little arrowhead. And what we do then is we want to click on one side of the association and then the other. and then this automatically draws this in for us. And what we have down here now is a description of the association that we just added. This is just another element in the model. And so we can give this some kind of name. It's not really important what the name is. So we could call it something like it's just flavors, maybe. And then we have these two boxes down here where it says, you know, member end on this side, member end on this side, and then we have, you know, the name here, ice cream, and the name flavor. That gives us an idea of what end we're actually talking about this coming from. And so, you know, it was created ice cream here. We see this is up here, and what this does then is it says, well, you know, if I'm going, say, this way from flavor toward ice cream, then I'm calling that end ice cream. Maybe I want to say something like used in, and that says, you know, what ice cream as a flavor is used in, and we see as we update it, then we update it here as well. And then we can say it is navigable, and navigable isn't really necessary here. What this really means, this is a bit odd in the spec. If we say true, it definitely means that we can go that direction. If we say false, it means more undefined, is my understanding of it. But we would probably like to be able to say, well, maybe I want to know what ice creams use a given flavor, so it makes sense to be able to navigate that direction. And then the multiplicity says, you know, essentially how many ice creams could use this flavor. And actually what we'd want to say here is, well, it could be 0 or up, because maybe we have a new flavor, we don't have an ice cream that uses it yet, or maybe it's used in lots of different ice creams. So we'll set that to there. And then over here we do something similar where we would actually maybe want to call this flavors, and then this is also navigable, and the multiplicity here is 1 or more, because an ice cream should really have at least one flavor, but could have multiple flavors. And we'll see we want to constrain this a bit further, but we can't really easily constrain it here just with these options that we're given. We might want to say something like, we really have maybe no more than, you know, a certain number of flavors in a given ice cream. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that again. Now, what we see is that if we look in the model down here, well, we may be expected to see something here, and we're really not. We're seeing flavors here, but for flavor, we're not actually seeing this link going back, right? So what we can do is we can click on the association again, and we'll see we have this owner, and here it says association, and here it says classifier. And unfortunately, the language being used here is the language used at the definition of UML. And so a class is a kind of classifier where this arrow is an association. And so what the owner is saying is that, you know, this is really where this information sits. So we see here we have this called flavors, and then if we look over here in the Model Explorer on the left, we see we also have flavors here. You'll see if I change that to association, that goes away, right? Then I have this link here called flavors, but I don't actually have it in ice cream anymore. And that's because I'm saying this is a property of the link itself, not of the classifier. But really what I want is to say on both sides, these are properties of the classifiers, and then if I'm inside flavor, I can get back to, through used in, to the ice creams that I have, and from the ice creams I can get back to the flavors. And maybe this is a questionable decision because I'm linking these things together too closely, and probably I wouldn't really want to do this in my generated code. I wouldn't want to have a list on both ends where flavors are somehow dependent on ice cream and ice cream is dependent on flavors. But let's go ahead and set it up in the model this way for now, and then we can actually, one, see this appear in the model and see how it shows up over here, but two, we can then use those later as we're writing expressions to, say, go back and forth between flavors and ice creams. Okay, so at this point we have a very basic set of classes and an association between them. We see we have these arrows at each end, meaning this is bidirectional. We see we have the multiplicities here, where we have 0 or more ice creams that use a flavor and 1 or more flavors that are in an ice cream. And then we see we have these names at each end. So going in this direction, a flavor is used in certain ice creams, and then going back to the left, an ice cream uses certain flavors. Okay, and at that point, I guess we're done with the video. What we'll do next is we'll look at adding OCL expressions in order to actually enforce constraints on this piece of the model that we currently have.